What up, YouTube? It's the Authentic Man, aka Godson Ken, back with the video. I thought this would be a good time to speak on this topic again. Well, it's a different topic, but it's one that sort of aligned with another topic that I did before. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into the video. With the topic at hand, make sure to leave a like and a subscribe. I greatly appreciate it. Make sure to follow the Peef Let's Talk show. You can follow them obviously here on Facebook, but you can also follow them as well on their YouTube channels where they do different broadcasts and everything like that. So without further ado, let's get into it. I want to discuss today. So saw this post that came by, asked by a member that says, at what age is a man too old to be holding his parents accountable for his own adult decisions? And y'all can read through some of these remarks, but I just want to focus on what I made, what I did, and give sort of an audio version of this, and maybe be able to convey exactly what my thought process into this and give a little bit of more insight in this. Okay. So, how I responded was, if the parent has never addressed past trauma, there is no age limit. Current issues do mainly fall on the person as an adult, but let's not act like past traumas don't have a direct influence on current situations. And like I said, I wrote the stuff and I stand by what I wrote. We live in this delusional world right now where, again, everything is so really out of touch, and it's like what used to me be just kind of common sense is no longer common sense, right? So when I say your past traumas affect or have a direct influence on your current situations, again, to me that should be self-evident. But if you need more evidence, there's a reason why two-parent households produce way better, more productive citizens, adults, than single-parent households. There's a reason why kids who grow up in the foster care system are way more likely to end up in jail or prison than those who don't grow up in the foster care system. And there are plenty of statistics to show that how a child is brought up directly influences and affects how their life will play out as an adult. This is why, and even if you bring it back to relationships, many women will often say, well, if you look at the child's mother, the father, or look at how their upbringing was, you can get a pretty good gauge and a pretty good sense of what you're going to be, what type of situation you're going to be getting yourself into and getting involved with that person. So when I see a reply that says, and this is what the reply to that previous comment I said was, and if the parent prior never addressed their trauma or their parents never addressed their trauma, does that entitle an entire bloodline to pass accountability to the previous generations? And to me, that reply there is, again, it's a reply that is a way to be very dismissive of it's a way to be very dismissive of what the question that she actually asked is, and instead of her just saying exactly what she feels, we're now just doing this whole thing of where we're switching up the argument, we're switching up what is being said. And so again, how I replied is I just said, all accountability, no. But some accountability, yes. And I'll give an example. I think, what's his name? Dr. Umar Johnson always talks about the residual effects of slavery, right? And how black people as a whole, we need to go to therapy because we are suffering the residual mental effects of slavery that have just been passed down. So in that scenario, and again, that's just one scenario, but I'm sure that, you guys are smart people, you guys could think of more scenarios. But for that specific example, you can see how the traumas, the sins of the father can affect the sins of the son. The sins of the grandfather, the grandmother, and so on can affect the son. What your ancestors did have a direct influence on how current people are living today. I don't think it would be outlandish for a Holocaust survivor to be like, yo, that stuff that my father or grandfather or great-grandfather went through, that still plays out in some effect today in how I live. Because again, you start to pass down certain traits, issues, and traumas through the lineage and stories and stuff like that, right? This is, like I said, you can see this played out today in racism. And you have a lot of, like I say a lot, but you have some people who view other people as different people or less than or whatever because that's what's been passed down to them. That's all they know. That doesn't necessarily make it right, but it is what it is in that scenario, right? And if they don't know this isn't how life is set up, if they were taught a certain way, they have to unlearn that mindset. But that doesn't mean that what they were being taught isn't there and it wasn't passed down from a mother or a father or something like that, right? So anyway, though, the way I answered this, and I'll read it in full now, is all accountability, no, but some of the accountability, yes. But let's keep in the frame of how you ask the question: parent and child dynamics. As a parent, if you know you did some major fucked up shit to your child, but never addressed that fucked up shit you did to your child, the child that is now an adult isn't wrong for saying, hey, this situation I'm in now could partially be attributed to you as well, mom or dad. Again, ultimately the responsibility falls on the adult, especially as they age. But do not act like those past traumas do not have a direct influence on current adult situations. That's a bunch of BS and ultimately shows how little parents actually care about their own child and shows how selfish they are. I then got a response of, this post specifically labels men as men, not children. As an adult, one should understand their parents were. Sometimes parents have babies very young, just two adults, not immortal entities like gods or devils, who engaged in intercourse. And that doesn't mean they immediately handle their own issues or know how to parent a child. Simply because they engaged in intercourse and became pregnant. Nevertheless, what percentage of accountability should be on the adult making their own decisions? And this is the response. That was the response that Raven gave, right? First of all, again, this is what I'm saying. Like these type of back and forth, they're never really back and forth. I can say never, but often they're not really they're not really. The posts aren't necessarily made in good faith. They're made to try to prove a point. And again, when you get through and cut through the BS and everything like that, you're really able to get through, okay, I can see exactly where this is coming from, right? So when she says that this episode specifically labels men as men, that's her assumption of what is a man. This is what matter of fact, let me give you what I wrote out, and then I'll kind of conclude this real quick. So basically, the response that I wrote to her was semantics. From a technical sense, one can be considered a man as young as 11, depending on whom you ask. In the U.S., the normal emancipation age is 16. However, that could be lowered if brought to court, as emancipation itself has no real age limit. You are assuming that with age comes maturity and intellect, and that's a bunch of BS. To put off valid points that your child, now an adult, brings up past trauma that was never addressed as a kid, that the child says is affecting them as an adult, is super dismissive of what that child is going through and shows a lack of empathy for one's own children. It's psychopathic to tell your child that is now an adult, hey, you've grown up now. Even though I raised you in a crack house and made terrible choices that affected the way you perceive reality, your choices are yours now, so don't bring up anything that happened before, because you make your own decisions now. As far as percentage, that's irrelevant. Just admit that there is shared accountability. All these semantic challenges seem like just a way to justify bullshit. And I stand on that. I stand on what I wrote. And this is where I was to say that, again, I made a video talking about psychopathic mothers in the black community and how this is an issue, because I ain't gonna say I don't see it, but the way that you try to phrase certain questions and the way that you try to ask certain questions, and then you give me a response to those questions, and then they steady want to shift the narrative and shift the frame of the question, means that you weren't necessarily asking a question to gather information. You were asking a question to try to prove a point, which would lead me to want to say, okay, well, what is the point that you're trying to prove here? What is it? What are you trying to say here? Are you asking the question to gather a different perspective, or are you simply asking the question to prove a point? And again, if you're just asking the question to prove a point, what is the point that you're trying to prove? Are you trying to say that, hey, when you turn 18, your decisions are on you as an adult, and it doesn't matter what your upbringing was? Well, if that's the case, I'm going to just call bullshit on that. I'm just going to call bullshit on that. But if that's how you're thinking, to me, that is psychopathic behavior, because you're not displaying any type of characteristics that a normal person, period, that actually cares about the relationship would show. Look, and I've always said this and I stand by this. As a parent, my job doesn't stop as a parent once my child turns 18 or whatever age you consider an adult, I put that in quotation marks, an adult to be. My parenting doesn't stop at that age. As a matter of fact, wasn't there a whole issue of having, insurance on a kid until 22 because they had to go through college and stuff like that? And then seeing if they can extend that out. Well, look, if you're going to send your child to college, your parenting still needs to be there. As your child becomes a young adult, they're still going to be most likely needing some type of guidance and stuff like that. That's why you got so many, to me, that's why you got so many of these so-called, like what Kevin Samuels is a kind of male mentor, right? Well, the male mentor should come from really ideally your parents, either your father or your uncle or your older brother or whatever, but ideally it should come from an older figure, which again would usually be your father or your uncle or something like that, right? But from the way that this is presented, it's like, well, that shit goes away. Because again, think, as a daughter should be able to go back to her mother or her parent if she needs help in a situation as an adult. See, I think there's this whole thing that once you get grown, you just know it all. And that's the thing, as an adult, this is the thing as an adult, and this is why I say as an adult, you need to learn when you need to apologize to your kids and bring that type of stuff up. As an adult, you don't know everything. As an adult, in your 20s, you don't know everything. In your 30s, you don't know everything. In your 40s, you don't know anything. This is why when one talks about wisdom is something that is usually gained through experience. And experience is something that usually is gained over time. This is why the elder in most communities are revered. This is why the people who are 60, 70, 80 years old, they're revered, because they just simply through time, there's going to come a level of wisdom that a 20 or 30, a person in their 20s, a person in their 30s simply is not going to have. And that person in their 20s or 30s, when they need to seek counsel, when they need to seek some type of wisdom or anything like that, the first person that they should be able to turn to is their parent. Because again, the parent is the one who should be the first person to truly love them in an unconditional way and to want to see them do better in an unconditional way. But the way that this stuff is framed, and the way that I see this a lot in the black community, specifically when it comes to black women, because these are primary caretakers in a lot of these situations and stuff, right, is once you get 18, I'm just going to kick your ass out the nest. You get out there and you're on your own. And anything that I did bringing you up, it don't matter. You out there on your own. And then they wonder why their kids repeat the same cycle and go down this pathway of what the hell. I challenge those that are, you know what, again, I don't want to necessarily make this too about a race thing, so you know what, I'm going to skip that, what I was going to say. Look, to me, this is an element of that psychopathic behavior that I don't know if it's just been indoctrinated into our culture or where it really came from. I still think capitalism has a little bit to do with it, but I think it's even maybe deeper than that. But there is a psychopathic nature that I think has been indoctrinated into so many of our black women, period, to the point to where you'll have some parents that they'll say that they expect for their child to give them something back once they become older and more successful. And to me, that's like, okay, that's not unconditional love. That's a conditional love. That's a conditional. You're putting some type of condition on that. You're putting some type of condition on, okay, well, I'm going to raise you as your parent. I'm going to raise you as a child. But then I expect you to bring me something back for raising you as a child, even though to me, and this is just my personal opinion, that child didn't ask to be there. You're supposed to just raise them as a child because that's your child. That's your responsibility. That's somebody who you love that you chose to bring into the world. And man, like I said, this is, to me, it's psychopathic behavior, man. It's super psychopathic behavior. Hold up. Before everybody, I guess I'm going to bring this up so everybody understands. When I say psychopathic behavior, exactly what I mean. So, put in psychopath definition so y'all understand what I'm saying. This is the definition of a psychopath. Defined as a mental antisocial disorder in which an individual manifests amoral and antisocial behavior. They show the lack of ability to love or establish meaningful personal relationships, express extreme egocentricity, and demonstrate a failure to learn from experience or other behaviors associated. Again, it's psychopathic to say to me as an adult. It's psychopathic to tell your child that as an adult, the experiences that they were brought up under, you or whoever as a parent, that those experiences don't play a role in how that child's life plays out. To me, that's psychopathic. To me, it's psychopathic and super dismissive to not be able to be self-critical and be self-aware enough to know when you are on some bullshit. And when you do that bullshit, you need to apologize for your wrongdoings. You need to at least acknowledge that, yo, you did something wrong and bring that up. This is why, like for me, for instance, if I do some BS or some wrongdoings to my kids that I know I was in the wrong for, I need to apologize to my kids. Don't just act like that shit never happened and keep it moving and expect them to just keep it moving. That's not how that shit works. That's not how that shit works. That's just like you as a mother. If you as a mother and you got a father and that father just ups and leaves and says, I don't want to be in the situation no more, and leaves you to raise a child, and then they come back when the kid is 17, 18 or whatever, you're going to feel some type of way if they come back and act like they weren't on some bullshit and don't bring up show no type of remorse of the predicament that they put you in, that they helped to put you into. Of course, there's accountability on the mother's side and stuff like that, but there's still accountability on the father's side as well. But to sit there and act like there's no accountability, to me, that's bullshit. That's some bullshit. Again, that's that psychopathic nature and that lack of accountability. Look, guys, just admit that you're wrong sometimes, man. Just admit that you're wrong. It's okay to be wrong. But what's not okay is doing somebody wrong and then acting like your wrongdoings don't affect what goes on in their lives, or just dismissing it off. That's bullshit. Anyway, that's all I got up on this. If you guys want to read through the rest of the comments and everything like that, you guys can always join the People That Talk show on Facebook. Remember to go like their content and stuff like that. Other than that, this is Godson Ken, or the Authentic Man, aka Godson Ken, excuse me. Saying peace out until next time.